Now, students from the University of Cape Town have embarked on a second day of demonstrations after handing over a memorandum to the institution on Monday. This amid ongoing protests at institutions of higher learning across the city over the last 2 weeks. A number of students are currently being housed at the offices of the student representative councils as they have nowhere to go. Ahead of the budget speech on Wednesday, a call is being made for an in-depth look at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme accommodation and fees at universities. A crisis for many other students is that they belong to the so-called missing middle. They cannot afford to pay the university fees, but also do not qualify for financial assistance from NSFAS. A call has been made for classes to be suspended until this and other issues are addressed. The organisation Equal Education calls on government to prioritise student welfare and access to higher education. It says investment in student accommodation and expanding the NSFAS budget, among others, are vital. Many students are at UCT buckling under the burden of great student debt. Meanwhile, UCT said in a statement, among others, that measures have been put in place to support as many eligible students as possible. This was a particular focus on financially vulnerable students, adding that the SRC assistance funding has aided 26 students. There will be no further concessions beyond what can be provided within its budget. With around 8,200 beds available, it has the capacity to accommodate 71% of eligible students that applied. Let's expand the conversation, speaking to Mahfouz Raffee, Head of Research for Equal Education, for more. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. The big focus on financial vulnerability and the so-called missing middle. And of course, these are the matters that have come under sharp focus once again. It's not the first time, is it?
No, certainly not. We've been fighting this battle for over a decade now, and it's really disappointing and disheartening to see that no sustainable solutions have come to the fore. In fact, if anything, things are getting worse. Government is continuing to embark on austerity despite having little to show for it. And in higher education, this is particularly dire, with billions of rands being cut over the medium term, as recently announced. And we're seeing the crisis play out in our universities, from the ivory towers of UCT and FITS down throughout the system, with historically backed institutions also extremely disadvantaged and without capacity to offer learners a hope for employment and a better prospects for their future.
As you make mention of how matters are essentially getting worse, where are the loopholes insofar as the missing middle, understanding the financial vulnerabilities of this group?
Yes, look, it's certainly a big problem to address. I think what we're seeing with National Treasury is that personal income tax, there's a sort of a bracket creep that may be happening, that we might be expect from the budget, and that will affect especially the lower rungs of those paying income tax quite significantly. The government has introduced a loan scheme, but the coverage is very minimal, and it's really a plaster, band-aid on a bullet wound. Because the need for funding and for higher education is far greater. The current NSFAS threshold is certainly far too low. You know that the median household income in South Africa is about 95,000 rand, and the average cost of tuition in South Africa is 56,000 rand. So that's half a household's income for most of the country. And certainly unaffordable to anybody in that sense. And so what really needs to happen is that we need to commit a greater public funding towards greater coverage. Not enough students are getting support to enter university, despite us having growing numbers of bachelor passes. It's just really unfortunate that 10 years after Fees Must Fall and heroic efforts to prioritize higher education funding and greater access has yielded little fruit because of a lack of political will and because of misguided, I think, economic and fiscal policies.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, I mean, what would you like to hear insofar as expectations are concerned ahead of the budget speech tomorrow? Because, of course, a lot of focus on that in-depth look on the National Student Financial Aid Scheme.
Certainly. We need comprehensive solutions to this, but very little seem to be forthcoming from Treasury. I'm actually quite level at the moment because it's not just in higher education that budget cuts are really affecting people's bread and butter and their ability to survive, but in basic education, the situation is increasingly dire. We just heard on SABC a bit earlier today that despite several publicly stated commitments as recently as last week from the Minister of Basic Education that pit latrines would be finally eradicated by March, they've now since backtracked on this, citing budget cuts and reappropriations as a reason why pit latrines won't be fully eradicated and replaced. And school infrastructure is crucial to the future success of learners, to learning environments. Learners, especially young women learners, cannot go to school when they're menstruating, for example, when there are no toilets available to them. Beyond the infrastructure crisis, there's further budget cuts to education. Budgets have been decreasing in real terms by, I think, over 6 billion rand over the last 5 years under this new administration. And that's led to teacher cuts in the Western Cape, as we've heard. It's led to the really slow and poor delivery of school infrastructure. There's increasing overcrowding. And so what we're seeing is that public good education, both at basic and tertiary level, is being eroded. And so when the president makes commitments to implementing the Bella Bill, providing for compulsory grade R, focusing on early childhood development, we really welcome these, but without meaningful budgetary increases and resources dedicated towards education, we're heading for a crisis as a future in this country.
Yep.